You're not welcome here anymore. Get out. My sister Madeline's voice cut through the morning air like a blade as I stood in the parking lot of Walsh Daughters Construction, staring at the heavy chains wrapped around the front doors. A handwritten sign hung crooked on the glass, "Not welcome here." My hands trembled as I clutched my coffee, the steam rising between us like the years of resentment she had been hiding. Behind her stood 3 of our longtime employees, their eyes fixed on the ground. Nobody would look at me. The humiliation burned hotter than the August sun beating down on the asphalt. "Madeline, what is this?" Dad asked me to come back. "You know the business needs both of us right now." She stepped closer, her perfectly styled hair not moving an inch in the breeze. "Dad is confused. He doesn't know what he's saying anymore. This company doesn't need you. It never did. You've been riding our family name your whole life, contributing nothing. You're good for nothing, Evelyn. Always have been. My name is Evelyn Walsh. I am 34 years old, and I had just driven 6 hours from my cramped apartment to save the family business my father built from nothing." I turned away, feeling everyone's eyes on my back. The rejection played on repeat in my mind as I sat in my car, parked across the street where I could see the building. Walsh Daughters had been my second home growing up. Dad taught me everything about construction, from reading blueprints to understanding load-bearing walls. While Madeline studied business management in college, I learned carpentry on actual job sites, working alongside Dad during summers and weekends. But then I got married at 26. My ex-husband convinced me the business wasn't my place, that I should focus on being a good wife. I stepped away and Madeline stepped in. When my marriage crumbled 2 years ago, Dad promised I could return anytime. He said the company needed my hands-on skills, not just Madeline's spreadsheets. I finally gathered the courage to accept his offer, only to find chains on the doors. My phone buzzed with a text from my father. "Where are you? Madeline said you never showed up." She was already rewriting the story. I drove to Dad's house, my stomach churning with dread. He looked smaller than I remembered, thinner. The cancer treatments were taking their toll. Madeline called. "She says you changed your mind." "Dad, that's not what happened." His confused expression told me everything. Madeline was controlling the narrative, and he was too sick to see through it. I spent the next week applying for jobs, my pride crushed, but my determination growing. The rejection from my own family stung worse than my divorce. I found work at Thompson's Community Workshop, a small carpentry program that taught woodworking skills to anyone willing to learn. The pay was barely enough to cover rent, but the work felt honest. My supervisor was an older man named Vincent, a retired master carpenter with weathered hands and kind eyes. He noticed my skills immediately. While other students struggled with basic joints, I completed projects with precision that surprised even him. "You've done this before," he said, examining my dovetail joints one afternoon. "My father taught me. We used to run a construction company together." Vincent studied me carefully. "Used to." I explained everything, the words tumbling out faster than I intended. He listened without interrupting, his expression growing thoughtful. When I finished, he set down his tools and looked at me directly. "You have real talent, Evelyn. The kind that doesn't need a family name attached to it. You could run your own business. You just need the courage to start." His words planted a seed I hadn't considered before. Maybe I didn't need Walsh Daughters. Maybe I could build something better. My first independent project came through a community bulletin board. Mrs. Patterson needed her kitchen renovated on a tight budget. She was a retired teacher living on Social Security, and the big companies quoted prices she couldn't afford. I offered to do it for cost plus a small fee, just enough to cover my time. The kitchen was a disaster. Water damage from a leaking pipe had rotted the cabinets. I spent 3 weeks rebuilding everything from scratch, matching the original 1940s style she loved. Mrs. Patterson baked cookies and brought me lemonade, treating me like the granddaughter she never had. When I finished, she cried. "It's more beautiful than I imagined. You're a miracle worker." She told everyone at her church about me. Within days, I had 3 more inquiries. Small jobs, nothing glamorous, but they were mine. I named my tiny operation Walsh Restoration because my work spoke louder than any family drama. Then Mrs. Patterson's kitchen appeared in the local newsletter's home improvement section. The photo showed the before and after transformation. My phone number was listed at the bottom. That's when Madeline called. "Nice little hobby you've got there. Playing carpenter for old ladies. How pathetic." I hung up, but her words echoed in my mind all night. Word spread faster than I anticipated. My second job led to a third, then a fourth. People appreciated my attention to detail and honest pricing. But success brought unwanted attention. Madeline started showing up at my job sites, always with some excuse about being in the neighborhood. The first time, I was working on the Hendersons' front porch. She pulled up in her expensive SUV, stepping out in designer heels completely inappropriate for a construction area. "Just wanted to see what my little sister is up to. This is cute. Really cute." Her tone dripped with condescension, but I saw something else in her eyes. Concern. Maybe even fear. The visits became more frequent. She would drive past slowly, watching me work. Once, I caught her photographing my truck with my business name painted on the side. I was taking clients she considered beneath Walsh and Daughters, but they were clients nonetheless. And they were choosing me. One evening, she cornered me at the hardware store. The fluorescent lights made her face look harder, older. "You need to understand something, Evelyn. This town belongs to me now. Walsh and Daughters has contracts with every major developer and half the homeowners. Whatever you're trying to build will fail because I'll make sure of it. You're nothing without our family name." I met her eyes without flinching. "Then you have nothing to worry about." I didn't expect allies, but they found me anyway. Marcus, who used to manage projects for Walsh and Daughters, reached out first. He took me to coffee and spoke carefully, glancing around as if Madeline might be listening. "She's making mistakes. Big ones. Cutting corners, ignoring safety protocols to save money. Good people are leaving." Over the next month, 3 more former employees contacted me quietly. They offered advice, loaned me tools, and referred clients my way. They remembered when I worked alongside them, when I understood the craft as well as they did. Madeline only saw numbers on spreadsheets. The most surprising call came from Vincent's nephew, who worked as Madeline's operations manager. We met at a diner outside town. "She's losing it," he confided. "Screaming at everyone, making decisions without consulting anyone. The crew is ready to walk. If you open a real company, I know at least 5 people who would jump ship immediately." I listened carefully, gathering information but making no promises. I wasn't trying to destroy my sister's business. I just wanted to do good work and earn an honest living. But the universe had different plans. A letter arrived that would change everything. The Riverside Historic Preservation Committee was looking for a contractor to restore the old Morrison Building downtown. It was a prestigious project, the kind that defined careers. And they were inviting me to submit a proposal. The Morrison Building had stood empty for 15 years, a beautiful skeleton of what used to be the town's first department store. Restoring it required specialized skills in historic preservation, something few local contractors understood. The committee's letter explained that Walsh and Daughters had submitted a proposal, but failed to meet their standards. I stood outside the Morrison Building that evening, studying its faded brick facade and broken windows. This was it. The opportunity to prove I was more than Madeline's cast-off sister. But accepting meant declaring war. Madeline would see this as a direct challenge, and she wouldn't respond kindly. My phone rang. Dad's number. "Evelyn? Can you come over? I want to talk about the business." At his house, he looked friendlier than last week. The dining table was covered with documents and financial statements. "Madeline says everything is fine, but these numbers don't make sense to me anymore. I'm too tired to understand. I just want to make sure the company survives." I studied the papers, seeing what he couldn't. Revenue was down. Projects were running over budget. Client complaints were increasing. The company was slowly dying under Madeline's leadership. "Dad, what if I told you I got invited to bid on the Morrison Building restoration?" His eyes brightened for the first time in months. "That's wonderful. That project could make your career." "It's the same project Madeline lost." Understanding dawned on his face. "Oh." I left without making any promises, but we both knew what I would do. I spent the next 2 weeks preparing the most detailed proposal of my life. I studied every inch of the Morrison Building, researched original construction methods from 1912, and consulted with historic preservation experts. My proposal wasn't just about restoration. It was about honoring history while creating something functional for the future. The committee reviewed proposals from 6 contractors. Mine was the smallest operation by far, but I had something the others didn't: genuine passion and meticulous planning. When they called with questions, I had answers ready. When they asked for references, Mrs. Patterson and the Hendersons praised my work enthusiastically. Meanwhile, Madeline was spreading rumors. I heard them through the network of former employees. She doesn't have insurance. She's not licensed properly. She'll abandon the project halfway through. None of it was true, but mud sticks. I responded the only way I knew how, through professionalism. I ensured every license was current, every insurance policy exceeded requirements. I documented everything and prepared a portfolio showing every project I'd completed, no matter how small. The day I submitted my proposal, I felt strangely calm. Whatever happened next, I had done my absolute best. No shortcuts, no compromises. Just honest work backed by genuine skill. Madeline called that night. I heard you submitted a proposal for Morrison. You're making a huge mistake. Pull out now while you still can. Good night, Madeline. I hung up and slept better than I had in months. The committee awarded me the contract. The news spread through town like wildfire, and Madeline's reaction was immediate and explosive. She called an emergency meeting at Walsh Daughters, demanding explanations for why they lost the bid. According to Marcus, she blamed everyone but herself. The committee is stupid. The preservationists are amateurs. My sister probably slept with someone to get that contract. Her words were reported back to me by multiple sources, each one more uncomfortable delivering the message than the last. But the real damage was internal. Madeline's paranoia grew. She started micromanaging every detail, questioning decisions she used to delegate. The experienced crew members who'd worked there for decades began making mistakes under her constant scrutiny. Small clients started canceling contracts, citing better prices or more attentive service elsewhere. They were coming to me. Mrs. Patterson's nephew needed a garage addition. The Hendersons' neighbors wanted their basement finished. Each satisfied client led to 2 more inquiries. My phone rang constantly. I had to turn down work because I couldn't handle it all alone. Then Madeline called me directly, her voice shaking with barely controlled rage. Drop the Morrison project. I'm not asking. I'm telling you. Drop it or I'll make your life hell. I took a deep breath, measuring my words carefully. You don't have that power over me anymore, Madeline. I'm doing this project because I earned it. Your threats mean nothing. The silence that followed was chilling. When she finally spoke, her voice was cold. You'll regret this. The Morrison Building restoration began in September. Local news covered the groundbreaking ceremony, and I stood in front of the camera explaining my vision for honoring the building's history. The reporter asked how it felt to work on such a prestigious project. It's an honor. This building deserves respect and careful attention. That's what I intend to give it. The clip aired that evening. By morning, my website had crashed from traffic. The email inquiries were overwhelming. People wanted to hire me, congratulate me, or just express support. Several comments mentioned they'd stopped using Walsh Daughters after poor experiences. One message stood out. Your father would be proud. He always said you had the best instincts in the family. Keep fighting. It was unsigned, but I suspected it came from one of Dad's oldest friends. Madeline's response appeared in the local business journal 2 days later. An interview where she dismissed my success as a fluke, suggesting the preservation committee made an emotional rather than practical choice. Historic restoration requires extensive experience. My sister has worked on a handful of small residential projects. This is setting her up for failure. The preservationists responded with a statement supporting their decision, citing my detailed proposal and obvious expertise. The public relations battle was beginning, and I was winning without even trying. At a town council meeting, 3 residents praised my recent work. Madeline wasn't there to hear it, but everyone else was. The shift in perception was undeniable. I was no longer just Madeline's sister. I was becoming my own person. Dad started asking more questions. The confusion in his eyes cleared occasionally, revealing the sharp businessman he used to be. I visited him weekly, careful never to badmouth Madeline directly. But when he asked about projects, I answered honestly. When he asked about finances, I showed him my organized books. "You're doing well," he said one afternoon, studying my profit and loss statements. "Better than I did at your age. You taught me well." He set down the papers, his hands shaking slightly. "Madeline called yesterday. She sounded stressed. Is everything okay at the company?" "You should ask her directly, Dad." I did. "She says everything is perfect. But the numbers she showed me don't match what I remember. Projects that should be profitable are losing money. Good employees are leaving. She says it's just normal business fluctuations, but it doesn't feel normal." I chose my words carefully. Sometimes people get overwhelmed. Managing a construction company requires balancing many things at once. It's not easy. He nodded slowly, but I could see him thinking. The seed of doubt was planted. I didn't need to water it. The truth would grow on its own. That evening, Madeline must have sensed the shift. She sent a long text message accusing me of manipulating Dad, turning him against her. "You can't stand that I'm successful. You've always been jealous. Now you're poisoning our father's mind." I didn't respond. Actions spoke louder than words. The discovery happened by accident. I was helping Mr. Chin with a permit application when I noticed something odd. Walsh and Daughters had pulled permits for work on his property 6 months ago, but never completed the job. He paid them $8,000 as a deposit. "Your sister promised it would be done in 3 weeks. That was in March. It's now October. Did you get a refund? She keeps saying they'll start soon." I stopped calling after she yelled at me for being impatient. I made some calls to other clients who'd left Walsh and Daughters for my services. The pattern emerged quickly. Late projects, missed deadlines, deposits never refunded for incomplete work. 3 clients threatened legal action. 2 had filed complaints with the Better Business Bureau. The company was in serious trouble. Madeline wasn't just losing new clients. She was hemorrhaging reputation and facing potential lawsuits. Dad's life's work was circling the drain, and she was too proud or too blind to see it. I documented everything carefully. Screenshots of complaints, records of incomplete projects, testimonies from frustrated clients. I wasn't looking for ammunition to attack my sister. I was gathering evidence to save the company before it completely collapsed. But the question remained, what should I do with this information? Exposing Madeline would hurt her. Staying silent might destroy everything Dad built. The choice kept me awake at night. My business grew beyond anything I imagined. By November, I had hired 2 part-time carpenters to keep up with demand. We worked from my apartment's garage, cramped but functional. Every project was completed on time and under budget. Every client received personal attention. Word of mouth became my best marketing tool. A local hardware store offered to sponsor my work, providing materials at cost in exchange for displaying my business cards at their counter. The owner, Mr. Phillips, had been friends with Dad for 30 years. "Your father always said you had the gift. Not just skill, but integrity. That's rarer than talent." The Morrison Building restoration was progressing beautifully. We'd stabilized the foundation and begun work on the facade. Preservationists visited weekly, praising our attention to detail. An architectural magazine requested an interview about combining historic preservation with modern building codes. Meanwhile, Walsh and Daughters was bleeding. Another 3 employees quit, including Madeline's operations manager. They didn't come to me, but they spread the word about her erratic behavior. Suppliers started demanding upfront payment, no longer trusting the company's creditworthiness. A regional contractor approached me with a partnership offer. "You're going places. We could combine resources, take on bigger projects together. I'll handle the business side, you handle the craftsmanship." I declined politely. I'd learned my lesson about letting others control my destiny. Whatever I built, I would build on my own terms. The refusal surprised him, but he nodded respectfully. "Smart. Keep doing what you're doing." I intended to do exactly that. The confrontation happened at a regional builders association meeting. These monthly gatherings brought together contractors, suppliers, and industry professionals. I'd avoided them for months, not wanting to face Madeline publicly. But the Morrison project required networking, so I attended the December meeting. Madeline saw me immediately. She stood at the front of the room, holding court with several older contractors who'd known Dad. When I entered, she stopped mid-sentence. "Well, look who decided to join us." My little sister, playing contractor with her toy tools. The room went silent. 30 people turned to watch. I felt my face flush, but kept my voice steady. "Hello, Madeline. Nice to see you too." "Is it though? Nice to see the person who's been stealing my clients? Spreading lies about my company? Turning people against me? I've never said a word against you or your company. My work speaks for itself." "Your work." She laughed, but it sounded forced. "You mean the work you learned from Dad, using his name, his reputation. You're nothing without Walsh. You're good for nothing on your own." An older contractor named William stepped forward. He'd worked with Dad before I was born. "That's enough, Madeline. Your sister has earned every client she's gained. Maybe instead of attacking her, you should focus on why clients are leaving in the first place." Several people nodded in agreement. Madeline's face went pale, then red. She'd expected support, maybe even applause for putting me in my place. Instead, the room had turned against her. I stayed calm, refusing to gloat or attack back. "I'm here to learn and network, just like everyone else. If you'll excuse me." The real shift happened after that meeting. People started talking openly about Madeline's failures. Suppliers complained about unpaid invoices. Former employees shared stories of verbal abuse and unrealistic demands. The protective wall around Walsh and Daughters was crumbling, and the ugly truth was emerging. 3 people approached me privately in the following week. All former Walsh and Daughters employees. They brought documentation, safety violations ignored, materials substituted with cheaper alternatives without client knowledge, workers paid under the table to avoid proper insurance. "We kept quiet because we needed the jobs," one explained. "But it's gotten worse. She's going to get someone hurt. Or worse." I listened to every story, taking notes. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about preventing a disaster. If one of those shortcuts resulted in a structural failure or workplace injury, people could die. The company would face criminal charges, not just civil lawsuits. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because we trust you. Your father built this company on integrity. You're the only person who can save it now." I met with Marcus that evening. He brought financial records he'd secretly copied before quitting. The numbers were devastating. Walsh and Daughters was technically insolvent. Debt exceeded assets. The only thing keeping it afloat was Dad's reputation and existing contracts. But those were drying up fast. "She's desperate," Marcus said. "Desperate people make dangerous decisions. You need to act before she does something irreversible." I knew he was right. The question was no longer if I should intervene, but how and when. I requested a meeting with Dad, Madeline, and the company's attorney. Dad looked confused when I arrived at his house with a folder full of documents. Madeline looked furious. The attorney, Mr. Brennan, looked concerned. "What's this about, Evelyn?" Dad asked weakly. I laid out everything methodically. The incomplete projects, the safety violations, the financial irregularities. I presented documentation, witness statements, and financial analysis. I didn't editorialize or attack. I simply showed the evidence and let it speak. Madeline exploded. "This is lies. All lies. She's making this up because she's jealous. She wants to take over the company." Mr. Brennan studied the documents carefully. His expression grew darker with each page. "These are serious allegations. If even half of this is accurate, the company faces significant legal exposure." "It's not real," Madeline insisted, but her voice wavered. Dad looked at me with heartbreak in his eyes. "Is this true?" "I wouldn't be here if it wasn't." "Dad, the company you built is in trouble. Real trouble. But it's not too late to fix it." Madeline stood abruptly. "I've heard enough. This is a coup attempt. I'm calling my own lawyer." She stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. Dad sat in silence, processing everything. Finally, he turned to Mr. Brennan. What do? We need an independent audit immediately. If these allegations are confirmed, we need to take corrective action before someone gets hurt or we face criminal charges. I'd known this would devastate Dad, but it had to be done. I reached across and squeezed his hand. I'm trying to save the company, not destroy it. The Morrison Building restoration was completed in February, 3 weeks ahead of schedule and under budget. The grand reopening celebration drew hundreds of people, including the mayor, Preservation Society members, and local press. The building gleamed, its historic character restored while incorporating modern safety and accessibility features. The mayor gave a speech praising the project. This restoration represents the best of our community, honoring our past while building our future. Thanks to Evelyn Walsh's dedication and skill, this landmark will serve our town for another 100 years. Cameras flashed as I cut the ribbon. The crowd applauded. I saw Dad in the audience, tears streaming down his face. Madeline wasn't there. The press coverage was extensive. The architectural magazine published a featured article. The Preservation Society nominated the project for a statewide award. My phone exploded with new business inquiries. 2 cities requested proposals for similar historic restorations. I was offered office space in the Morrison Building itself at a reduced rate. The location was perfect, visible, and prestigious. Within a month, I'd moved from my garage to a real office. I hired 4 full-time employees and started bidding on larger projects. Walsh Restoration was no longer a side business. It was a legitimate company. And clients who'd tried both knew the difference. Where Walsh and Daughters cut corners, I maintained standards. Where they treated clients like transactions, I built relationships. The contrast was becoming impossible to ignore. Even people who'd initially supported Madeline were quietly switching sides. Success has a way of attracting people. So does integrity. The exodus from Walsh and Daughters accelerated. By March, half the workforce had quit. The remaining employees were the ones who couldn't easily find other work or were too loyal to abandon a sinking ship. Projects sat unfinished because there weren't enough skilled workers to complete them. Madeline tried to hire replacements, but her reputation preceded her. Nobody wanted to work for someone known for yelling at employees and ignoring safety concerns. The few people she did hire were inexperienced or desperate, which only made the quality problems worse. A major client pulled a contract worth $200,000, citing failure to meet agreed standards. Another demanded a refund for work already completed because it failed inspection. The lawsuits began piling up. Mr. Brennan worked overtime trying to negotiate settlements, but the damage was done. The independent audit confirmed everything I'd reported. The company was hemorrhaging money, facing multiple violations, and at risk of losing its contractor's license. The board, which included Dad, Mr. Brennan, and 2 of Dad's oldest friends, held an emergency meeting. Madeline showed up defensive and angry. This is all my sister's fault. She's been sabotaging me from the start. Actually, Mr. Brennan said calmly, the evidence shows these problems began before Evelyn started her business. You've been covering up mistakes for over a year. Dad looked at Madeline with disappointment that cut deeper than anger. Why didn't you ask for help? She didn't answer. Pride had trapped her in a spiral of bad decisions, and now there was no way out. I spent a week preparing a comprehensive plan. Not to gloat, not to punish, but to genuinely fix what was broken. I analyzed every active project, identified which could be salvaged and which needed to be terminated with refunds. I created a staffing plan using people I trusted. I outlined financial restructuring that could pull the company back from insolvency. The board meeting where I presented my plan was tense. Madeline sat across from me, arms crossed, refusing to make eye contact. Dad looked exhausted. Mr. Brennan and the other board members studied my proposal carefully. This is thorough, one board member admitted. But it requires significant changes in leadership. Yes, I agreed. It does. Madeline finally spoke. So you're just going to take over? Everything I've built. You haven't built anything, Madeline. You've been tearing down what Dad built. I'm trying to save what's left. After everything you've done to sabotage me, I've done nothing except run an honest business. Your failures are your own. The board voted unanimously. Madeline would be removed from all executive decision-making authority. I would be reinstated as co-owner and given operational control. She would retain a minority ownership stake, but no management power. The restructuring would begin immediately. Madeline stood slowly, her face pale. You've all made a terrible mistake. When this fails, don't come crying to me. She walked out with whatever dignity she could muster. Dad looked at me with gratitude and regret. I'm sorry it came to this. Me too, Dad. But we'll fix it. I just hoped I was right. The restructuring was brutal and necessary. I had to make hard decisions quickly. 3 projects were too far gone to salvage. We refunded deposits and apologized sincerely. 5 other projects needed significant repairs to meet code. We ate the cost and fixed them properly. I brought in Marcus as operations manager. We hired back some of the skilled workers who'd left, offering better pay and respectful treatment. I implemented strict quality controls and safety protocols. Every shortcut Madeline had taken was eliminated, even when it cost more time and money. The first month, we lost $30,000. The second month, we broke even. By the third month, we were profitable again. Clients noticed the difference. Suppliers restored credit terms. Slowly, painfully, the company's reputation began to recover. Dad visited the office one afternoon in May. He looked stronger, the treatments finally working. He walked through the workshop, watching the crews work. Several workers greeted him warmly, relief evident in their faces. It feels like the old days, he said. Like when I first started the company. That's what I'm trying to restore. You're doing more than that. You're making it better. Meanwhile, Madeline was conspicuously absent. She'd moved to an apartment across town, refusing to speak to anyone in the family. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she was bitter, convinced everyone had betrayed her. The reality that her own choices led to this outcome hadn't penetrated her denial yet. But I wasn't thinking about Madeline. I was focused on the future, on building something sustainable and ethical. Something that would make Dad proud. The official transition happened in a small boardroom ceremony. Mr. Brennan handled the paperwork, transferring operational control and updating company documents. The sign outside was changed to simply Walsh Construction, dropping the "and Daughters" that had caused so much pain. I stood in Dad's old office, now mine, looking at photos on the wall. Dad as a young man, breaking ground on his first project. The crew from 20 years ago, smiling and muddy after a hard day's work. And one photo of Madeline and me as children, holding plastic toy tools, pretending to be just like Daddy. When had everything gone so wrong? My phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello. Evelyn, it's Madeline. Her voice sounded different. Smaller. Less certain. What do you want? I have a potential client. Someone I worked with years ago. They're asking about a renovation, but I can't take the project anymore. Obviously. She paused. I thought maybe you could help them. I sat down slowly, processing this unexpected development. You're referring a client to me? Don't make it weird. I just thought, they deserve good work. You do good work. It wasn't an apology. Not exactly. But it was the closest Madeline had come to acknowledging reality. Send me their information. I'll reach out. Okay. Another pause. Evelyn? I need to ask you something. What? Is there any way I could? I mean, would you consider? She struggled with the words. Could I work for you? In some capacity? I need a job. The request shocked me into silence. I didn't answer immediately. Madeline waited on the line, her breathing the only sound. Part of me wanted to say no, to let her experience the same rejection she'd given me. But revenge had never been the goal. Restoration was. On one condition, I finally said. You start at the bottom. No special treatment because you're family. No executive decisions. You take orders, you learn the craft properly, and you rebuild trust one day at a time. I understand. And Madeline? If you create problems, if you undermine me or mistreat employees, you're gone. No second chances. Okay. She started the following Monday as a project coordinator assistant. the lowest level position in the company, basically an errand runner and paperwork handler. The crew watched her warily, remembering how she'd treated them. But Madeline kept her head down and did the work without complaint. It was humbling for her. Probably humiliating. She'd gone from boss to subordinate overnight. But she showed up every day, completed her tasks, and slowly began learning what she'd never bothered to understand before: how construction actually worked. Dad watched this development with cautious optimism. Do you think she'll really change? I don't know. But everyone deserves a chance to try. The arrangement was awkward. Madeline reported to Marcus, who reported to me. She wasn't allowed direct contact with clients or suppliers. She organized schedules, filed permits, and did the unglamorous administrative work that kept projects running smoothly. To my surprise, she was good at it when she wasn't trying to control everything. By summer, Walsh Construction had fully recovered. Our reputation exceeded even Dad's peak years because we demonstrated that integrity mattered more than profits. We weren't the cheapest contractor, but we were the most reliable. Projects finished on time, on budget, and to exact specifications. I merged my separate Walsh Restoration business into the main company, creating a specialized historic preservation division. We were now handling both new construction and restoration work, serving a broader market than ever before. The office expanded. The crew grew to 15 full-time employees. And Madeline was still there, quietly doing her job. She'd stopped making excuses and started asking questions. Marcus reported that she was actually learning, showing genuine interest in understanding construction methods. The bitterness seemed to be fading, replaced by something that looked like acceptance. One afternoon, she approached me hesitantly. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" We went to my office. She sat across from my desk, the power dynamic completely reversed from our last confrontation here. "I owe you an apology. A real one, not just words." "Go on." "I was wrong. About everything. I thought managing a business meant controlling everything and everyone. I treated people like tools instead of humans. I took shortcuts because I was terrified of failing, and that fear made me fail worse." She took a shaky breath. "You saved Dad's company. You saved my job. And I've been too proud to admit I needed saving." I studied her carefully, looking for manipulation or performance. But her eyes were genuinely remorseful. "Thank you for saying that. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know. Madeline, I forgive you." She looked up surprised. "Why?" "Because holding on to anger hurts me more than it hurts you. And because you're trying to change. That takes courage." The town's business awards ceremony in September recognized Walsh Construction as Company of the Year. I accepted the award wearing the same work boots I'd worn to my first renovation job, polished but still clearly used. It felt important to remember where I'd started. The mayor praised our commitment to quality and community involvement. Local news covered the story, contrasting our success with the near collapse under Madeline's leadership. They didn't mention her by name, but everyone knew. Madeline was in the audience, applauding politely. A year ago, she would have been seething with jealousy. Tonight, she just looked tired and perhaps a little relieved that the spotlight wasn't on her. Dad gave a short speech about watching his daughters grow into capable leaders. He emphasized the plural, daughters, not daughter. Evelyn saved this company through skill and integrity. But Madeline is learning what leadership really means. I'm proud of both of them. It was generous, probably more than Madeline deserved yet. But Dad had always believed in second chances. Maybe that's where I learned it. After the ceremony, clients and competitors approached me with congratulations and business cards. Walsh Construction was no longer just a local company. We were gaining regional recognition. 3 architecture firms requested partnerships. 2 cities invited proposals for major public works projects. Everything I'd hoped to achieve by returning to the family business was happening. Just not the way I'd imagined. But maybe the unexpected path was better than the planned one. The final moment of closure came on a cool October morning. Dad called me and Madeline to his house. He looked healthier than he had in over a year, the cancer in remission. He wanted to make an announcement. "I'm retiring officially." The company is yours now, Evelyn. Fully and completely. Dad, you don't have to. Yes, I do. You've earned it. You rebuilt what I created and made it better. You showed wisdom I never had. He turned to Madeline. And you've shown the courage to admit mistakes and start over. That's harder than success. Madeline's eyes filled with tears. Dad, I'm so sorry for everything. I know. We all make mistakes. The question is what we do after. He handed me the deed and corporate documents. Walsh Construction was now entirely mine to lead. The responsibility felt enormous, but I was ready for it. I'd proven I could handle success without losing my integrity. That evening, I hosted a company celebration. The entire crew came, bringing families and friends. We rented the Morrison Building's event space, the same building that had launched my independent success. Dad sat in a place of honor, surrounded by people who genuinely loved him. Madeline approached me as the party wound down. Thank you for not destroying me when you could have. That was never the goal. I know that now. I didn't know it then. She paused. What you did, starting over with nothing and building this, it's incredible. I couldn't have done it. You might surprise yourself. You're learning. She smiled, and for the first time in years, it reached her eyes. Maybe, but I'm glad you're in charge. The company is in good hands. I looked around the room at the crew laughing, Dad smiling, clients mingling with employees. This was what success really looked like. Not chains on doors or signs saying not welcome, but open doors, welcoming everyone who valued honest work and mutual respect. The doors that had been slammed in my face were now mine to open. And I planned to keep them open for anyone willing to walk through with integrity and dedication. That was the real victory. Not revenge, but restoration. Not just of buildings, but of relationships, reputation, and self-respect. I'd started with nothing but a $3 keychain's worth of dignity. Now I had everything that mattered. And it felt like coming home.